Hi, all, and welcome back to a world of bookish adventures. My name is Shannon.
And I'm Amanda, and we are excited to share with you today's podcast. Today, Shannon will be sharing her journey to the Shakespeare and Company bookstore in Paris. I am loving all these European bookish adventures that you did this past summer, and I am just so jealous. So, why don't you tell us a little bit about the bookstore?
So, today's journey started with a 2 hour train ride from Germany to Paris. Now, being from the States, as we both are, with limited public transportation that we really have, it's so amazing that in Europe, they have such great public transportation, their trains, their metros. It was such a comfortable, relaxing, and really quick ride to Paris. And side note, for those that may be going over there and taking the train anywhere from Germany, I did purchase the bond card, and because Germany was my home base for this summer, and the bond card gives you discounts on the train fares that you buy, even if you're leaving Germany. So that's a good key if you're going over there. But anyway, so after doing some research, I knew I had to make a stop at the Shakespeare and Company bookstore.
Of course, you did. I mean, with a name like that, you know it's got to be important.
Right. So let's first talk a little bit about the history of the bookshop because I just think this is amazing, Amanda. So, Shakespeare and Company is an English language bookshop in the heart of Paris. It's located on the banks of the Seine River, just across the street from Notre Dame, which was really kind of surreal being there and seeing Notre Dame. And side note, they were still this summer working on the repairs, so it was interesting watching that go on, but definitely want to go back once it's all finished and opened back up just to see what it's done and completed. But Shakespeare and Company opened in 1951, and it became a meeting place for writers and for readers. The bookstore was founded by American author George Whitman. The building that the bookstore is at was originally a monastery. And when George purchased it, he would like to tell everyone that he was pretending that he was the sole surviving monk of the monastery, and would often be heard to say that in the Middle Ages, East Monastery had a monk whose duty it was to light all of the lamps each nightfall. And so now that role is played by him.
It sounds like he perfectly fits the eccentric writer stereotype. I love it.
Right? I want to play monk. I want to do that.
Yeah.
So when the first store first opened, it was called Le Mistral or the Mistral, which the Mistral is, and I apologize if I'm mutilating my French, but it's a strong northwesterly wind that blows through southern France into the Gulf of Lion, which is in the Mediterranean. So I thought that was kind of interesting that they took the name from that. But when George bought it, he changed the name. And in April 1963, which was the 400th anniversary of William Shakespeare. He wanted to honor Shakespeare as well as Sylvia Beach, who was the original Shakespeare and Company founder from 1919.
Wow.
So the right. So the original store was a great place that writers of that time, like Joyce and Hemingway and Fitzgerald and Stein and Eliot and Pound and all these incredible writers would come and hang out and be a part of that original Shakespeare and Company store. And George said he wanted it when he paid homage to her and having the same name, wanted to create that same type of environment. So George would say that he created this bookstore like a man would write a novel, building each room like a chapter and people to pen the door the way they open a book. And I just love that imagery, a book that leads into a magical world, their imagination, and I just love that visual. And I think that's what it feels like for all of us bookish lovers when we walk into a great and interesting bookstore or library, museum. We just feel like we are writing our own chapters in our own book.
Oh my gosh. That is a beautiful visual. And I feel like I want to do my house like that now. Not that I have a ton of rooms, but like over here is the Narnia room. And over here is the Shire. I mean, that would be amazing. But anyway, sorry, go ahead.
Well, I do have to say, one of the times you visit me, we're going to have to do a road trip over to Georgia because there's a bookstore that I absolutely love, a little indie bookstore in Georgia, and that's how she's created part of her bookstore. And you actually have to walk through the Narnia closet, and
No
each
way.
room is like Lord of the Rings room or Harry Potter room or Alice in Wonderland room. So I think you would absolutely love that.
Oh, oh my goodness. Okay, sorry. Go ahead. We'll
Future
get back on topic.
future podcast, future
Yeah.
podcast. But under George's ownership, that original history still lives on, and it quickly became the spirit of its former predecessor's legacy. Allen Ginsberg, Richard Wright, Henry Miller, Lawrence Durrell are just a few of the authors that would come and visit under George's ownership. So I just think it's amazing that not only did he pay homage to the original bookstore, to Sylvia Beach, but he continued by having it a great place that authors could go to. Some interesting history about George Whitman that I didn't know that I thought was interesting when I was doing some research was when he was in his early 20s. That's when the Great Depression was happening in the United States. And so he decided to set out on a self proclaimed hobo adventure. And with only $40 in his pocket, he walked, he hitchhiked, and he rode the rails from one end of the United States to the other. He went through Mexico, he went through Central America, but when he got to the Yucatan, he fell seriously ill. And he was found by a local tribe of Mayans, and he was cared for by them and nursed back to health. And this experience had such a profound effect on him and inspired his philosophy, which was be hospitable to strangers lest they be angels in disguise. And I just think that's such a cool story to begin with, and I think it
Yeah,
really sets up his life, his path, and then creating this bookstore.
definitely.
So when the bookstore opened, writers, artists, intellectuals were all invited to sleep among the shop's shelves. They had small beds on the second floor, which doubled as patron seating during the day, and even piles of books. Since then, an estimated 30,000 writers and artists have stayed at the bookshop. So all of these guests, they're called tumbleweeds, and they drift in and out with the winds of chance. But this created such a strong sense of community, which was so incredibly important to George. And George would often to refer to his bookshop as a socialist utopia masquerading as a bookstore. And I just think I love that. I love again that statement in that visual.
Oh yeah, I love the tumbleweed visual for sure, but I mean the whole concept is just amazing. So again, social worker, social work perspective, we talk a lot about the person and environment principle. So, there's whole research papers you can read about it if you want to, but in a nutshell, what it says is our environment affects our mental and emotional health. So I would just wonder what it would be like for your environment to be books and people who love them. I mean, just so much serotonin. Like serotonin brain bath. It must be amazing.
Oh my God. You know what? Absolutely. And I love that idea, that person environment principle, because I mean, if you think about what happened when COVID hit and we all were in lockdown and we couldn't go out and expand our environments, how that really affected so many people's mental health and such. So I can definitely see how being in an environment like that where your passion is just going to keep creating this amazing community, which is exactly what he did.
Yeah.
In order to be a tumbleweed, to be accepted as a tumbleweed, you had to do three things. So, first, you had to promise you would read a book every day, which, like, okay, I could
Hmm.
do that. Number two, you had to help in the store, help run the store for a few hours each day. So, again, working in a bookstore, nothing wrong there.
Yeah.
And then and then the third thing that was asked of you was you had to produce a one-page autobiography, which I thought was interesting. And I don't know about you, Amanda, but I think I definitely could hit all three of those requirements in order to live in a bookstore.
Oh, definitely. I think I could manage that just to be like, yes, I'm here and I'm having my serotonin brain bath. Small price to pay. I could handle that.
Right. And I was excited again in my research to learn that you can still apply to be a tumbleweed. Now, I haven't gone through the whole process to see it, what has changed and what is involved in it. But for anyone that might be listening, that be like, I want to be a tumbleweed, we will make sure to share all of that information on our social media platforms if you want to apply.
We should totally add being tumbleweeds to our bookish bucket list. I think that would be awesome.
Like, can you imagine even taking like a week? Like, hey,
Yeah,
Amanda, let's go to Paris for a week and be tumbleweeds. I think we could
absolutely.
do this.
I think
I,
I could
I
handle it.
think we should put this on our summer agenda.
Yes.
And
Make
then,
it
and then
happen.
can you imagine updating your resume? Social worker, educator, tumbleweed.
Hey, listen, it takes all kinds, right?
Absolutely. So the third one I shared was you had to write an autobiography, and thousands upon thousands of autobiographies have been collected, and it has formed such an impressive archive with which captures generations of writers and travelers and dreamers who left behind pieces of their life and stories for us. And I just get chills just thinking about that.
Yeah, for sure.
To 2002, at the age of 21, Sylvia Whitman, who is George's only child, returned to Shakespeare and Company to spend time with her father. At this time, George was 88 years old and happily living in his kingdom of books. And in 2006, Sylvia officially became in charge. And on the shutters outside the store, George wrote, and I get chills every time I share this. George wrote, each monastery had a friar whose duty was to light the lamps at nightfall. I've been doing this for 55 years, and now it's my daughter's turn. And I was
Aw,
like, I'm just dying here.
yeah,
Talk about
yeah.
just coming around full circle.
Seriously, that's very, and that's like a quiet power to that. It's very
It
beautiful.
it really is. And on our YouTube channel, I'm going to show our listeners pictures of these shutters because these shutters are still outside the bookstore today with that writing as well as other writings as well. So you guys will get a chance to see those. So in 2011, Sylvia launched the Paris Literary Prize, a novella contest open to unpublished writers from all around the world, which I think is amazing. So for all our budding writers out there, maybe something you'll want to check into. And in June of 2023, Sylvia hosted its first literary festival. So I love how, she's kind of, you know, paying homage and doing the things that have all been done, but is now adding to Shakespeare and Company's impact on our culture.
Seriously, she's just no chill, no chill. She's like, Dad started it. I'm gonna just keep that train going.
Right. So the bookstore has had cameo appearances in Woody Allen's film Midnight in Paris, as well as continues to host at least one free literary event each week. And the bookstore still continues working with young authors, emerging writers, along with today's leading authors. And she's also, not to add all the other things that Sylvia is doing, she's also starting their own publishing house to help authors.
Wow. She's very busy. When does she sleep?
I don't know. I'm upstairs on the books, I guess. I'm not
Well,
sure.
yeah, yeah, I guess that's kind of built in there. All right.
So, George Whitman passed away on December 14th, 2011, 2 days after his 98th birthday. And even after all this time, his novel, this amazing bookstore, all it gives back to the bookish community, all of these are still being written by his daughter and all of us who continue to honor his legacy and his memory. Shakespeare and Company is often rated in the top 10 bookstores to visit. And I knew this for a little while. So when I realized I was going there, I knew I had to stop in and check it out.
I'm really glad you did so you could share it with all of us. And what an amazing piece of It had to be like a living time capsule.
It really was. So now that's the history, which I know we took a little bit of time to talk about the history, but I think it is important not only to pay homage to George, but it's amazing. And I just think it's such an incredible history. But let's
Mhm.
go ahead and jump into my trip. The bookstore is nestled in a side street directly across from Notre Dame, and it's surrounded by cafes and beautiful flowers and tons of activity. When you go, most likely you're going to have to be wait in line. It was about a 30-minute wait for me to get into the bookstore because it's so popular. And they also limit how many people can be in there at one time. So you don't feel rushed or you don't feel like all the people are on top of you. You know, you have space to walk around, look for books, just experience it. And, one goes out and they let somebody else in.
Yeah.
So while you're waiting, you can get a yummy snack. In 2015, they opened up the Shakespeare and Company Cafe, which is right next to the bookstore. Have some really amazing pastries there. You could read, like I shared, the fun writings on the outside shutters and walls and just really soak in the atmosphere. And all of the people that were there waiting with me in line, everybody was so nice. And we were just having casual conversation, sharing where we lived, what brought us there, how excited we were to be there. And interesting is, and again on YouTube, you'll see it. There is this large green sculpture that was there that I was like, oh, how pretty. No, that was a public water fountain. And I didn't
Wow.
realize it right away. And I think that's one of the things I love about Europe is they have these public water fountains all over and they're gorgeous. They're in the sides of buildings. They look like statues. So while you're waiting, have a snack and get hydrated.
Yeah.
Once you're inside, and they actually have, like, I don't know, for lack of a better word, a bouncer that's sitting at the front door. And as people go out, he lets people come in. But once inside, you are transported back in time with the creaky wooden floors, rooms upon rooms of books, and an upstairs area to relax in. So the downstairs area, each room is separated by a theme. They have popular fantasy books, they have a children's area, local authors, classical treasures, all the different genres you can think of. So many books you can get lost in. The staff there are just amazing. Thankfully, everybody spoke English, so I was very thankful for that. They were incredibly helpful. And if you're looking for something specific, they'll look up the books for you. They'll help you find it. And even if they don't have it, they will order it for you. So immensely helpful at that store. Now, as I shared earlier, this was founded as an English language bookstore. So the vast majority of books are English. They do have a small selection of French literature and French interest books that are written in French. However, I'm only bringing this up because when I travel overseas, I try to find a copy of Around the World in 80 Days by Jules Verne in different languages for my son. I happened to be in Germany last year, found a copy in German, picked it up for him. He loved it. And it kind of became a joke is everywhere I travel, if there's a foreign language that gets spoken, I'm going to get him a book so we can have this mass collection of Around the World in 80 Days because it's one of the most widely printed book in different languages. So we want to see how many we can get from my travels. They didn't have it in stock. They were sold out, but they were so helpful. They ordered it for me. So our tradition continues. So, as amazing as the downstairs is, once you head upstairs, for me, I think this is where the real gem is. Upstairs, they have rows and rows of books, seating areas, which become sleeping areas, and places where you can just read and relax. They have this large bulletin board where you can put your name and where you're from on small strips of paper and attach it to the bulletin board. And then you can see everybody else's up there, which was really cool to see. And stepping up here, you really felt like you were part of that tumbleweed tradition, just enjoying life in this amazing book of treasures.
Hmm. Yeah, I would definitely be adding my name and, just spending time looking at where does everybody come from.
Exactly. And what's so nice is nobody rushes you there. Even the people waiting in line, nobody was like, oh, they're taking so long, or the staff isn't trying to hurry you up. Everybody just lets each person have their own adventure, to have their own experience, whether you're there for 10 minutes or you're there for an hour and a half. They don't care.
That's amazing. That's got to be nice because I feel like often in our culture, it's always rush, rush, rush. So it's nice that you can just enjoy the public art and have a snack and read a book and nobody is fussing at you.
I feel like that's Europe in general. Like what you just said is like, describe Europe, that's Europe, but
Yeah.
definitely was what I felt there. So, of course, you have to buy stuff because that's what we do. So, when you go to check out, they have a Shakespeare and Company stamp, which they can put in all your books, which of course
Of
I
course.
had them do. Of course, you have to. And
Yeah.
I'll share pictures of what the stamp looks like online. But I also picked up a really cute tote bag because, well, why wouldn't you?
Because swag, you got to have the swag. I have a couple of different bookstore bags as well from some of my travels.
Right, you gotta have the swag. So I probably spent about an hour and a half there total, from waiting in line to checking out. After I walked a few storefronts down. I had this amazing lunch in this very eccentric looking cafe. Gotta love how the looks there. So it was the perfect way to end that whole experience.
Oh, absolutely. You get an hour and a half and what is basically a time machine, and then you get a fancy lunch. I mean, that sounds like an awesome day to me.
Well, and don't forget the pastry that I had at the beginning of the wait too. So you had
Yeah.
to have a little bit about. So this was such a bucket list stop for me. I hope to go back one day. I hope for our listeners out there, if you've been to Shakespeare and Company, I would love to hear your thoughts and your feelings about being there. And if you haven't been and you're planning on going over to France and you're going to Paris, definitely put it on your to-do list.
So I'm so glad that you shared that with us. It just sounds so wonderful. And while you go ahead and just tell us what's our next podcast about?
I am so excited to share that we will be having our second author spotlight, and we'll be featuring indie author Lorna House and her new book series, the Throne series, featuring the first book, The Throne of Serpent and Roses, which again, Amanda, such a great book. I'm going to send you all the stuff for you can read up on it before she comes. You're gonna love it. So definitely, we'll put her social media as well as her book information into this YouTube. But next week we'll make sure to give it to everybody again so you guys can check her out.
Sounds amazing. I'm totally looking forward to it. Thank you all for being part of our podcast. We look forward to connecting with you each week. And as always, we invite you to join us on our social media pages, as well as to like and subscribe to us on YouTube and your favorite podcast platforms. And of course, you can find all of the information in our link tree.
And don't forget to share your own bookish stories and adventures with us. Please either fill out the form in our link tree or email us your adventures at awobapodcast@gmail.com for a chance to have them shared on air.
Until next time, read more books.
And then go explore.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.